everyone, hi. My name's Gallagher, and I run Outgang. It's a very special stream today because we have a chance to interview Ben Erdt and Sam Alicea about creature creation using a VFX pipeline. Ben, Sam, how you doing, my friends?
Great, thank you.
Hey, how's it going?
Exciting to be here, I'm honored.
Yeah, definitely, me too.
So it's a great honor to receive the two of you today. You two have been working on a personal project that is called Flathead versus Deadeye. Now, this is definitely one of the most ambitious personal projects I have seen in a long time. There's so much content to go through today because we will be talking about the full pipeline going from the design all the way to the rendering. So that includes talking about blockout, that includes talking about high poly, that includes talking about texturing of these creatures using Mari, and finally talking a little bit about rendering. So the two of you have been very generous in preparing a full presentation for us. But before we do get started with the meats and potatoes of things, I simply wanted to give the two of you a chance to introduce yourselves more formally for those that are watching that don't know your backgrounds already. So who wants to start?
Oh, please, Ben. Everyone's here to see
Sure
Ben.
about that? Just sure about that? Really?
Go for it, Ben.
I thought this was about Flathead and Deadeye. Welcome to BFL. All right. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be here. It's quite an honor. My name is Ben Erdt. I've been in this industry for I think it's been almost 9 years. And my first job was at Guerrilla Games. I worked on Kills on Shadowfall, but I joined the team pretty late in production. Yeah, but there was still a lot to do and it was a lot of fun. But right after the release, we jumped right into Horizon Zero Dawn, on which I worked with bunch of amazing people on Horizon Zero Dawn, which was quite some fresh air in the gaming world and something awesome to work on. And 1 year into Horizon 2, I decided to go to Blizzard. And I'm currently still working at Blizzard on Diablo 4 as a character artist. And it's quite exciting. I've did some freelance jobs here and there. So I've freelanced for Blur Studios on Love, Death and Robots and for NVIDIA on the side. So I'm mostly on ArtStation and mostly on LinkedIn. That's pretty much it. But you can find all my work on ArtStation, basically what I've done throughout the years. So I love sci-fi. I love creature design, of course, monsters and battle armor and stuff like this. But I love to teach and I love to make tutorials and collaborate with amazing other people to, especially to learn, teach each other, and just to grow, having fun so far. Yeah, so it's a few nuggets about what I do and where I'm currently working at. Then at Blizzard, I worked for a couple of months at cinematics. This was temporary, and this is where I met one of the best creature texture painters I've probably ever seen. This is Sam right there.
It was one of the best things that could have happened at me at Blizzard to meet Ben over there. It was incredible to be collaborating with someone like Ben. So I'm Sam Alicea. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I started in the film industry at Rhythm and Hues as a lighter, actually. Working on the amazing award-winning film, Alvin and the Chipmunks. And from there, there was actually a point where they told me that there was going to be no work for a while. And then they told me, you need to come back in 3 months and we'll have something for you. And I was like, man, I just graduated. I have no money. I'm a student. I need to pay my bills. Do you have anything else? And they asked me, do you know how to texture paint? We have a lot of work for that. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And I had no idea how to do it. And so I jumped in and I learned how to do it by watching people next to me, by asking them questions. And funny enough, I started painting a little chain on the Hulk, the Ed Norton version. And by the end of the film, I was painting stuff on the Hulk and Abomination. And I thought, I think I found my call. I think this is it. And so from there, I started doing LookDev, a little bit of sculpting, grooming, but mostly concentrating on texture and LookDev. So I went from there to Sony Pictures, Sony ImageWorks after that. Got to work on Men in Black and some other stuff over there. And then went to Digital Domain to work on Iron Man 3. And I was incredibly lucky to work on the Mark 42 and the Mark 7, some of the main suits of the film. From there, I went to Blizzard, to the cinematics team, where I spent 7 years being a lead for the team on surfacing. And surfacing there does their own texturing and their own look depth for everything. So everything you guys are seeing on screen, if I painted it, I did the look depth for it. And it was super fun because I got to also not only do like the hyper realistic stuff that they work on, but also work on very stylized things like Overwatch and Hearthstone and all that stuff. And very fun stuff for that was that being at the beginning of those projects, I always got to sit down with the art directors and develop the style and the look of that stuff. And then after Blizzard, I decided to go back to films, and I went to Weta Digital. And at Weta Digital, I got to work on Justice League, where they were incredibly amazing to me. And I started, like, from week 3, started painting on villains for the film. And not only did I get to paint on villains of the film, I touched almost all the villains of the film, which was super fun. So if you guys have seen anything for Steppenwolf, I got to work on this guy. His armor was insane. It was incredible. I believe it was something like 350 UDIMs for his armor, I believe, something like that. Heavy stuff. Their creature department over there is incredible, and so I was growing immensely with them. Funny enough, I was supposed to go to New Zealand. COVID happened. I couldn't fly in, but I still got to work with them remotely. And now I switched after this now, and I got to work on that Darkseid as well.
Just all big names right there. You just keep on name dropping there. It's like okay.
This was super fun because DC Comics actually was very open to me just experimenting on these guys, because there was no textural reference of exactly what they wanted some things to look like, and at times they would tell me just go for it and try stuff out, and that was you don't get to do that very much in film, and that was very fun. And now I'm at ILM working on a lot of ILM stuff. In the future, you guys will see a lot of that stuff coming. But just as Ben, my stuff is only on ArtStation. I just started posting things for the first time online. I never had online presence, so I'm trying to get more art there. But yeah, no, sorry for the long career path.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. I love it.
And all that. I got to meet Ben, and I think that's one of the highlights of my career, because I met Ben, and he's like, I heard you do monsters. I'm like, oh, I love monsters. Do you love monsters? He's like, I love monsters. And we became immediately best friends. And then we were like, let's do monsters together.
Exactly. Monsters are the best.
There was something that you said at some point that like really kind of struck me. I'm not sure whether you said that to me in person or whether there was something that you said during an interview at some point, but regardless of the context, it kind of struck me. Like you said something about like the fact that you were like eating and dreaming about monsters and kind of like always thinking about like how can a monster like look under certain circumstances? What is the design of a monster? Like you were just like, it seems like you're just like breathing creatures all of the time, you know? And it's just like something that like, it feels to me that you are completely obsessed with. I mean, looking at your ArtStation page, I think that's probably a fair thing to say. I don't know what you think about that, but like, it's kind of funny to see like the two of you, like you are so compatible as far as your interests are concerned there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's been always fun to make something that's not real looking, even though you have to know the real thing to make the unreal believable. And I think that's the fun of it. You play with shapes, you play with the references, everything you absorb when you look out at nature, or the shapes you see. So everything is basically some kind of a remix of stuff that you've already seen. But what makes it interesting is maybe a personal taste that you put into it and the personal love for the thing you do. And I think that's what we have in common, especially Sam and myself. Like, we love to work on creatures because they're always challenging, they're always fun. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, monsters, especially monster fights, they're the best.
So Sam,
yes, they are.
Yeah. So Sam, I take it that you're more on the texturing side of things, right? Like, that's more your specialty there.
Yeah. Early on, looking at the stuff that Ben was working and doing, we were talking a lot about our work and trying to learn from each other. And at one point, I told Ben, I would love to work with you. I would love to do something with you at some point. And Ben was telling me that he also wanted to expand a little bit on training on surfacing, so some texturing and LookDev stuff. And so we started exchanging ideas, and we started, going for it. But texturing is definitely my main concentration now, and LookDev. And I love it. I love hiding stuff on my characters. I love trying to do stuff that I haven't done before. The more strange, the more difficult it is, the happier and more excited I get just to try, something different. But yeah. Recently, like this stuff that you guys are looking at right now, white skin is very difficult, and so obviously you guys will see later the creature Deadeye is all white, which made it very, very difficult. White skin is difficult because it's void of color usually, and you still need to make it look realistic. But as you can see on this guy, there's so many colors on his face, and there's so many detail going on, and I find that extremely exciting to do. A lot of times in films, a lot of the creatures and monsters get to look pretty brown and desaturated, and that's how they start pushing a little bit of the level of realism on them and all that. I love putting colors on my creatures. I love playing with that, so I try to push it sometimes to see how far I can get colors in there.
Yeah. So for the two of you, it was pretty much love at first sight. You two met each other. You fell in love. You had like a honeymoon and like
good dinner, candlelight dinner.
Yeah.
It's like,
I hope the bottle
kids,
of wine
right?
was an expensive one. Yeah.
It's like kids, for a kid, whoever is at the front of their house is their friend, And Ben and I were like that. As soon as I saw he liked monsters and I like monsters, like, you're my best friend. Yeah, let's do it.
like what 30 years ago. Hey, you got a SNES? Wow, that's so cool. So pretty much like that. Now it's just about to say that because you just showed the work you did on Diablo 4 with the white skinned person. I've remembered so many times when we met at the Blizzard campus, went for coffee. I'm talking about, hey, this guy is challenging me so much. Always, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. And it's something that it's really important on this stuff, guys. That it's I have people look at my work all the time, other artists, just to get some fresh eyes on what I'm doing. So as I'm working on this stuff, and I try to always go to my peers and get their fresh look on the things I'm doing, because it's one of those things that you look at something for so long that you stop seeing the mistakes. And so it's something that even with Ben, like Ben knows, like we would talk like almost every weekend on this project and just chat and show each other what we're doing and get some feedback from each other. And I don't mind telling people I don't know what I'm doing. That's how I learn everything. So
humble.
I love it. Yeah.
So humble. So the two of you met, and then you pretty much started working on this awesome project that's right here, which I have to say, guys, like the first time that I saw this particular project, so this Flathead versus Deadeye project there, I was like, wait, so are they announcing Love, Death, and Robots Season 3, and this is like the main attraction for that particular season? Is that like what's going on here, you know? So like, but no, it's like the two of you like just got together and just produced one of the most awesome projects that I've seen in like a while. Certainly when it comes to like personal projects, people don't usually have this kind of passion and effort to put into their projects there. But the two of you just got together and made something that's like really, really awesome here. So I kind of want to play the video for like everyone so that we can all take a look at it together, and then let's talk about it. Let's talk about how this project came to be, and certainly I think there's going to be a lot there that is interesting to dissect there.
And we are back to the BFL semifinals live from the Arena Maxima on Zoros 3.
That's right, this is where it all started. We are down to the final 3 fighters. The crowd is going crazy because we're about to see our long-term champion Flathead kicking shell against Deadeye in the last match before the grand finals.
I was so excited last night, I could barely get any sleep.
Right? I don't think anyone did. This is speed versus raw power, and we couldn't have asked for a better semifinal, to be honest.
Let's see how the rookie pairs up against the veteran Flathead. There were high bets on Nasher and Bugfish making it to the finals.
But they got eliminated!
They got eliminated! Who would have thought?
Definitely not me, but today we get to see a match between 2 very different fighting styles.
Well, all right, Flathead just stepped onto the arena floor, the winner of BFL 5, 12, and 14.
Just look at the size of this monster. Take a second and listen to this crowd.
Whoa, that's for the fans. Now, Flathead might be the favorite, but Deadeye is the meanest.
He sure is. He can see in the dark, has heightened hearing, and he's vicious. The energy in this place is unbelievable tonight. The match is about to start, but let's take a quick look at some stats.
Let's start by highlighting Deadeye's winning streak. He is 22-0, going from the lower brackets to the semifinals in just 2 galactic years.
But on the other hand, Flathead might be one of the most successful fighters we've ever had in the BFL.
That is an understatement. Over 4,800 pounds of shells and muscle. And now we go live to the semifinals fight.
So can I buy the rights to the Beasts Fighting League? Is that up for sale somewhere? Can I like pitch in with the first offer for that?
They're still looking for sponsors.
That's super cool. I mean, like, it would be great to turn this into like an actual series or something there. Like you two are really like definitely like trying to like build something here. I can kind of tell, you know, like I think that's really, really smart. I really love it. So yeah, so this project, you two have been working on this for like quite a while, right? Like this actually took you quite a long time to put together.
I think it was 1.5 years, something like this. We didn't know it was going to take that long because it started out so small and humble. And it's actually quite funny because it was not planned like this at all. It was more like, what about this and what about that? Especially when Sam starts a sentence, hey, Ben, I have an idea, or I have this idea. And then we're like, okay, this is the next one. Here we go.
Here's the next 3 months of my life going out the window. Right?
Yes.
But there's always awesomeness. No, originally, I think I just wanted to make a Zbrush bust. That's just a clay sculpture of a monster because the colleagues around me, they were going more into 3D printing, and I thought, hey, this might be maybe quite interesting. So I just sculpted a bust like this. And I just started up blocking something that could become Flathead, and I started sketching into 2D a little bit. Then this is actually the same time I started my TA at Blizzard Cinematics, and this is where I met Sam, and he showed me the stuff they were working on. I think they were working on the D4 trailer at that time, or just wrapping it up. I don't quite remember, but he was texturing some crazy stuff on his screen, and yeah, we were showing each other's work, and this is what I'm currently working on. He's like, "Whoa, dude, are you going to texture this?" No, I just want to do a clay bust. So okay, good, could be cool. But then I showed it to another friend of mine who's in Japan, Perry Lighton. He's an amazing rigger, and we worked together at Horizon Zero Dawn. And in 2017, he moved to Japan to work at Square Enix, but we're pretty much in touch every day. And whenever he's interested, he likes to rig whatever we build. So we were just chatting. I showed him, I'm sculpting this right now, trying to get more into 3D printing. I said, 3D printing, do you mind if I rig it? So they're like, oh, sure, you can rig it. Fine. So that means, okay, full body, retopo, because you need nice topology to rig something properly for deformation. So I went back to Sam, was like, hey, dude, I'm going to texture it. Yeah, I'm going to texture it. So I started working on this guy, and we met for coffee again several times. He's like, dude, it would be cool to have a second one, that could kind of next to each other, that could be in the same world. Or are you planning to make a second one? It's like, oh yeah, sure, I can do a second one. No problem. It's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Just like this. But the cool thing was, Sam was so amazing with this texture painting stuff, and he showed me what he's doing in a renderer called Redshift, and I was like, this could be cool. It's something. I was hooked by that renderer because it's purely GPU based, and it's so much faster than what I was using at the day, which was Arnold. I know Arnold now has a GPU based render path as well, but Redshift back then was. I was hooked, so I wanted to try it out. And if I have people who are amazing at Redshift, like Sam here or Tony Bratintovich at Cinematics, I knew, okay, if I ran into issues, I could always ask, or we could just meet up on Zoom and share out the screens and teach each other. So yeah, the decision was made. We make two creatures. I texture one, and Sam textures the other. And I think the way to grow, or maybe a great way to grow, is to surround yourself with people who are light years ahead of you. And Sam's definitely one of them. So I think the growth is just amazing.
That's funny because that's what I think of Ben. He's light years ahead of me. I'm about to go into ZBrush World now and get some Ben training.
Get some Ben training?
Some Ben training.
Yes.
Can I sign up for that too, please?
What's funny is we were only going to do some renders, some turntables, and then the guys were rigged, and Ben at some point was like, we should do like a post or two to, do this thing. I'm like, yeah. What? And so we're like, why don't we post them like they're fighting, right? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's post them like they're fighting. Okay, well, we need an arena for that, right? So okay, well, so Ben starts building an arena because we don't have an arena. And then a month before we posted, Ben, that I was like,
so. Yeah, that was a month before.
I was like, Ben, I have an idea.
Here we go.
Why don't we make a video with music and then put these guys, put the poses together? And then like 2 weeks before we posted, I'm like, hey, Ben, what if we record voices like announcers to this thing? And Ben and all this, he's like sending me like WrestleMania videos and all this stuff that we had always talked about. Like, this is what we want this to be. And I'm like, if we make a video like this, we can make it look like what we want it to. And so I called up two friends in California, and we made a call from Utah, California, Germany, and Australia, where I'm at, and we recorded the voices. We had a lot of fun with the guys. Kevin and Kevin is a very good friend. And I could hear their voices in the back of my head. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to be amazing for this because I think their voices sound like WrestleMania guys. They can do this. And Jake, I had worked with Jake before, making videos as well. Whenever I had the chance at Blizzard, I would make some funny videos and present it to people. And so Jake had always jumped in when I was doing crazy stuff like that. I was like, Jake would love this, and so he also jumped in to make the voice. But that was literally like 2 weeks before posting, right, Ben?
That was crazy. It was so much fun, especially I mean, as kids in elementary school and the first years of high school, in the 90s we watched WrestleMania back and forth, like with the old classics, the Road Warriors or the Legion of Doom, the Godwins. Of course, you had the Undertaker, you had Sid Justice, of course Hulk Hogan, and all the classics. So I remember that some of these shows, and a few of them are on YouTube, but also new ones. And that was the inspiration. So WrestleMania, and of course the Love, Death, and Robots, like that came out 3 years ago, I think, 2019 something. Yeah,
it's been a few years. Yeah.
It's been a while. But also both our love for monsters and creatures. So, and yeah, just basically just having fun, being kids, two kids coming together. I mean,
yes.
The only difference is I think that the toys became more expensive and more professional, but we're still kids. And
yes.
At the same time, I think. Oh, sorry.
Go on first.
Yeah, no, I like in the end, right, Ben? Like the main thing we wanted to do is just get people as excited as we are with monsters. That was like the final goal, that when we present this stuff, people would also want to do this kind of stuff and dive into the world that we're trying to create, So yeah. That was to me the main goal always.
But dude, that first cut you sent me of that final video, I watched it, and then he goes, "Hey Ben, what do you think?" Dude, this is a pitch, man.
It really is, yeah. So for everyone who is watching right now, this is up for sale, okay? Contact Ben and Sam if you have a proposal for them. They'll be happy to talk to you.
I think my mic dropped out.
All right. So Ben, I'd like to talk a little bit. So there's quite a lot of questions that I have for the two of you based on what you said, but I also want to kind of move on into like looking at this into like actual like 3D into like ZBrush and stuff. Can we talk a little bit about the actual design of these creatures and how the two of you kind of came to decide the kind of look for these different creatures? Was it just like you just kind of being just like, yeah, I guess I'll just put a plane here and I'll add a bit of rock there? Or like, was there something a bit more thought of in terms of like how do these creatures are supposed to look like and the kind of choices that the two of you have made in terms of design for the creatures? How did that whole process go about?
I think I can share my screen because I have a couple of sketches that I did for that.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's see.
Have you guys ever seen sketches from Ben? They're incredible.
They're not really sketches. They're like
I'm not sharing.
They're like very, very like clean and very precise concepts. You know what I like about you, Ben? I mean, I like a lot of stuff about you, but one of the things that I like is that because you do like you're so good at both 2D and 3D. Like, it feels like when we look at some of the concepts that you're doing, usually, I mean, like here, maybe you'll show us like some scribbles and stuff. I don't actually know what you're going to show us, but like when I see concepts of you, they're like super clean. And like as someone who does 3D, I kind of always appreciate the very high attention to like detail that you put in there, because like it feels like, yeah, like you kind of know what it takes in a good concept for it to afterward be well converted into a 3D model,
The thing is, I can't paint. I'm not a painter. I can't do colors and concept art. I always do line drawing. I do like an engineer. The way I would model it or build it, the way I try to draw it. So I'm more like constructing a drawing rather than actually painting it. There are like amazing painters out there that just take color in Photoshop and do an amazing painting. That's something I have no idea how to do. So I always do line drawings, like either on paper or Photoshop. Lately I use Krita. 2 years ago I figured out Krita, which is really awesome. But okay, So I just want to start with Flathead because he was the first one I did. And so I'm gonna do this. So this was some of the first sketches I did. So the idea was I needed some contrast. So I wanted like a 4-armed guy versus something that has tentacles. But the contrast was probably not high enough. So I did some sketches that came out of my mind. So I already had the idea of like these 2 stabbing arms that Flathead
These
had.
are so crazy good, by the way. Yeah.
In the final. So, but the first idea was to have them as swords, but they grow out like horns. Pretty much what I think what Turboraptor had in Love, Death, and Robots. He had this sword hidden in his left arm that was like a Swiss knife. And more something like turtle inspired. But then I met one that I thought could be something like an armadillo and a turtle combined. So when it rolls up, it looks like this guy here on the top right. And then I can roll into the arena or do a roll attack, just like wrapping up. And moved on to, this is something that got closer. So the 2 stabbing arms are there. But what I wanted to really do is like the tip of a tail being fired by an ankylosaurus. The one that has this massive like shell on his tip of the tail. And like a scorpion inspired like spike or stinger or something. So the idea kind of grew that the first guy is going to be covered in shells. The thing on this one, the issue was like the distribution. It was like, there was not much contrast in there, like shells versus skin, maybe from the tail. So the last drawing was kind of like this. This was like the closest. And the funny thing is, this is like the roughest sketch, but it was the final one that I took. So that's maybe one of the examples. You can do like 60 sketches and they don't guarantee successful design. And the roughest one actually was the one I wanted to go for. But the main like design idea was having like a gradient of scales. Like he's very top heavy with all the play.
Yeah.
Then it fades out towards the bottom. So we have like this attention towards the top. And because they were going to fight, I wanted to design something that could be like boxing gloves made out of shells. So I left the arms a bit free. So we have that contrast going on between, the shells on his body and here on the hands. And that was pretty much the concept or the sketching phase. The thing is, once I jump into 3D, it's always open for changes. So the first block out was something like this. So this is the Zbrush face. And it's super traditional. You take a sphere, you dynamish it, and you start sculpting. And I always start with the head first. So because the head can dictate the entire design of the character. And then the head, that comes usually the torso, and then I do arms, and I start to balance out proportions, the size of the arms, the size of the limbs. So that's why I always have them separate and I don't connect them. So I don't have to mess with, something that I actually like in size and scale and proportions. So then over here, so this is the first kind of rough sculpt I had of him. And you can always see that there was one thing that was different. The stabbing arms, they were pointing forward. And this is where, if I would give myself feedback, that would be something like, take a different color. See if I can do this.
I love how Ben is just there giving himself feedback. It's like, Ben, what are you thinking about when you did that?
Like when you look at it, and you're like, something is not right. So you try to analyze what's going on.
That's how you get better at things, people. You just like look at your work and you're like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have changed that. I could have.
It's kind of failing your way to success somehow, right?
Ben, how do you live with yourself? It's like, you must be like always like criticizing yourself, It's like, oh, how do you sleep at night?
Yeah, how do you do it, Ben?
That reminds me of a quote I think she was a very famous training coach in Germany, and she said, "Hey, I want to reach absolute perfection at my 525th birthday." And people are like, "What?" I know I'm not going to live that long, but she knows she's well on her way. So if there's a day where things don't go that well, it's not that bad. So I kind of thought that was cool. Anyway, so these are the stabbing arms. So that was pointing forward. So the final design was going to be like, yeah, that was a bit probably a bit weird because I want to have them like folding backwards, so they go back and then like this. They can maybe be embedded on his back. So that was like a bit of a better idea. But this was not the main thing. The main thing on this guy, or in this version here, was I kind of lost the attention to this upper area, because these guys were like so big, and I kind of liked it because they were boxing gloves, right? They should be like large and a lot of power going on. So what I did then was, in order to, make this better or read better, I had to scale up these two and the back shells. So this is a lot more massive. Let's see if I can switch to the next slide over here. So this was like almost the final block out of the one. It's still all Dynamesh, super simple. It might look high res, but it's actually not. It's just a bunch of subtools mashed together. But the difference here is already that I increased the size of the shells here and on the back shells as well. So I have a lot more mass here up there, and that is like the counterpart to these two, which I kept in size. That was fine. And then I just moved back the stabbing arms. That was pretty much it. I didn't touch the head scale because the head scale was fine. If I would scale up the head, the character appears smaller. And if you scale down the head, the character appears larger. In order to make him larger and this top part read better, I just had to scale up these parts. So this was more successful. Okay, that's already low poly stuff or retopo. Let's go in here. So this is more like a final version of the blockout. And actually what I want to show here is, I go very rough with the idea of the surfaces already. It's more like setting accents, like a sketch.
All of this is in Dynamesh, by the way, at this stage, or
this
did
is
you like
all
your
Dynamesh? Yeah, I don't do any crazy techniques or things. It's just you can steal a piece and extract and have a new subtool and just fudge it in place and do stuff like this. So this is super basic stuff. But what I like to do is I always keep, like I said, the limbs separate, but also the lower jaw, so I can always open it and sculpt the inside.
Oh, that's smart. That's super smart, actually.
That helps me when I do retopo. I retopo everything with the mouth open, and once it's ready and rigged, I can close the mouth and bring it back into Zbrush, put it on a layer, so I can sculpt details mouth open, mouth closed. So I'll get back to that in a minute. So I always have this. This is actually the last piece I fused together for that. But if I have something like this, even here, this is still super rough. Not even re-dynamished yet, but this is one of the stages. So the sculpting phase, the blockouts phase, is actually it took the least amount of time, to be honest, in this whole project. I think most of the time was for me, the texturing and the rendering. But this year was pretty straightforward. And when we go back to, I can find my Photoshop.
Well, for sure, when you have Sam that's there, that's always piling on the ideas as to how to go forward and what you can do on top of that. Of course, that the blockout that you did at the beginning would be the part of the project that would take you the least amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. But I always showed my progress to Sam, and he's like, dude, we could do this, or what about that? And because he's seen a lot of monster stuff. So it's always good to have input from different people. And
something, I don't know if you remember, sorry, Ben, I don't know if you remember that some of the stuff we also talked about as you were designing these guys and going on is we started also talking about how they sound, and that also influenced the design a little bit, and things that would happen when they roar or when they scream or when they're threatened. Because it's something I don't usually we don't see. Like a lot of people just want to do something cool and that's it, but they don't think about what is it that makes it cool, or what is it that makes it interesting or gives it story, or exactly. And so another one of the big things, Ben, was always like how they fight, right? That was one of your big ones that you kept always bringing up.
Yeah, if you can imagine the fight, it was easier to come up with the ideas, of tail whip, stabbing, punching gloves. But Deadeye was different because we already used all these ideas for Flathead. So we had to think about something for Deadeye. So he was more challenging in the design, but less challenging in the modeling. But yeah, I mean, Sam is absolutely right. And there's always this the story portion behind it. And I think the more you think about the background story of the design of a character, the more the creativity will grow. So if you think, why does a character have this? What's this function for? What's that? It's more relevant if you do a character that has armor and lots of gadgets and stuff like this. Once you know what the gadgets are for, or where the character lives in. For instance, if you have an idea of a character in armor and he lives in a high temperature environment, or is always exposed to high temperatures, maybe as a firefighter or something, why not adding maybe ceramic plating to armor parts, or because it's more heat protect or some heat protection, right? So it's a cool design part, and it's been not done that often, right? So just something like this, if you know what is what for, or environment and background story, I think creative ideas will explode.
That's like something I've always appreciated about people who are highly creative, and like especially within video game studios, I mean, people who do concept art elsewhere, I know they're the same too, like that kind of idea that like people who draw, like you think that like someone who's like drawing a 2D concept like only does that, but truth be told, like those who actually like really worry about that actual 2D concept, they're thinking about the whole thing. They're not thinking about just, okay, what does it look like? They're thinking about, like you said, Sam, what kind of sound does it make? Like how does it move? How does it speak? What kind of cookie does it like to like eat? These sorts of things. They're like always kind of thinking about these things. Like everything about the creature. It's like the process of designing goes beyond just the act of creating that 2D or that 3D concept of the creature. It really has to like sort of encompass everything, so that everything that you put within the creature makes sense in terms of like functionality, in terms of what the creature has to do, where it has to go, and all these sorts of things.
You'd be surprised how much people cash on that as well. You would think you're sometimes wasting your time and thinking on all these things, but people cash on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's and later on we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but it's a visual storytelling, right? It's you're not there to tell someone all the time, hey, he has strong ceramic plating because of this. So it's just visually just telling you what it is for and how it's used and all that stuff, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, things like damage and stuff, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, I just want to say, for those who are here live, by the way, if you are watching this on Twitch, if you are watching this on Discord while we are streaming this live, if you have any questions for us, by the way, feel free to post them. If you have any questions for Ben, if you have any questions for Sam on anything that they're presenting, please feel free to ask them.
Yeah, we already have one question.
All right, let's go for it, Christine.
Yes, from Patrick. Where do you get your inspiration from? To both.
There's multiple places, and this is something when I present in colleges and places, is something of a very interesting topic, because inspiration is unique to everyone, and you need to find what is it that inspires you. And for me, what works is, number one, music inspires me. So depending on the music that I'm listening to, I start getting ideas. I see scenes, and I see characters, and I see fights, and I see light. If it's sunny outside, if it's rainy, that also like changes my mood on what I'm doing. But a big one is real life. So insects and animals in our world that deep sea creatures that are living in our planet that are so strange, that all that stuff, I love looking for that. And to me, that's it's really important to always go back to something real in the world as you design features on the creature, because unconsciously people start connecting that with what you're doing. And so even if it's something that doesn't exist in our world, they connect the Deadeye nose and ears to a bat, and they connect, the tentacles to an octopus, and so all that kind of stuff. They feel like it's a little bit more realistic because of that, But that to me is where I usually like source my inspiration from. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Music can do a lot, music, the rhythm, and yeah, that gets you into the mood. But also, like, especially real life, yeah, and like visually, how animals evolved throughout the millions of years, but also the habitat. You think about, where the creature or the animal lives in, what does it eat, how does it hunt? There's this little spider that produces a little net that it's holding and waiting for prey, and then when prey comes by, it just wraps it around its prey and catches it. This is really cool. You don't have to do exactly a creature based on that spider, but based on the idea, the way it hunts. This can be inspiring. If you get inspired by animals, not just the visual, but also how they behave and what they do. So this could be quite nice. And then you can just combine them and play with it. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Music, nature, but also friends can also do a thing, and movies. Yeah, if you movie or game saturated, you always get inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys have no idea how many times Ben and I would just tell each other random facts about nature, just because we know that stuff like gets us going, and we just start talking about that, and we evolve a conversation from that. But yeah, movies also, like seeing what everyone is doing and try to get inspired in some of that stuff too. And
By
games,
the way,
yeah, definitely games. Yeah.
Sam, how do you have only 5,000 followers on like ArtStation? People, go follow this guy, all right? This guy is crazy good. Just like look at like the whole texturing that he's got there. This is like some of the best texturing scene I have ever seen, I think. So everyone, go follow Sam, all right? He needs your love. Let's boost your subscriber count.
Right now,
yeah.
You need a commercial, like that goes right in your face. Like this.
I've only been on ArtStation for not even maybe a year, maybe.
It's pretty good for a year, man.
That's pretty good for a year, actually. Yeah.
I started ArtStation when it was in beta. When I got a beta invitation.
One day, when I grow up, I'll be like Ben.
No,
I'll be
do
famous.
That. It's a mistake. Don't do it.
Yeah, no, I'm. It's so funny because the first time I posted my stuff on ArtStation, I was so nervous because there's so much good stuff out there. There's so many good artists that I'm always afraid to put my stuff, and it's a little bit intimidating. But I had to finally try and get something out and see if people liked it.
But I think that's what gives it a push, right? Amazing work by other people, especially those that keep pushing the boundaries that are like miles and miles and miles ahead. And it's good that they do this because they show you, hey, I can go further. There's more I can do. So they're the inspiration, they're the motivation for you. So that's cool. If you see something online, like crazy stuff like this, for instance, what we see right now, like the work it did, or the other people out there, like
that's definitely one of the things that
it's great.
Yeah, the materials are so good. The materials are so crazy good.
Did I disconnect?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm still there.
We're still here. Sam? Can you hear us? Don't leave us, Sam.
Okay, so from Kenny, a simple question. What are your strategies to keep motivated, to keep working on a personal project for 1.5 years, social aspects and collaboration?
That's a good one. That's a really cool. For motivation, I mean, it's normal that it's not always there. We were not like every day, like 8 hours straight. Hey, do this every day. There was some time where I haven't touched it at all, or we haven't touched it because we're either moving or we're busy with our jobs and stuff like this, or we just wanted to take a break from it for a week and come back to it again. Personally, myself, I usually have like this one giant project running, like this one, and then I have smaller ones I do in between, like sketches or busts, or I sometimes take a break from the large project and just draw a little bit and come back to it. I mean, motivation is not always there. There are some days where you're like, okay, I don't feel like it today, but the next day it's even better. So it's normal to have like these days where it's not always working. But I think the motivation that drives me especially is, how does it look? Imagine it finished. Imagine it done. And I think finishing stuff is extremely important. And for this one, motivation was easier because we were motivating each other.
Oh, Sam.
So it was easier to do. And I think this project was also our personal COVID lockdown therapy to get through those 1.5 years.
I'm back.
Sam,
I'm so
you're
sorry,
back.
guys. I rage quit. That was a legit rage quit. Everyone is so much better than me. I'm out of here.
I love that you rage quit at the exact moment that I was like complimenting your work. You're like, screw that compliments. No, I still need to improve. What is this? What are these? I'm out of here.
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. My internet.
Oh, don't worry about it.
man.
Internet.
Higher power.
All right. So let's move on.
I just heard Ben talking about this being our therapy for COVID, and I 100% agree. This was something that I kept telling Ben. At the time, there were many changes in our life going on. Moving to Germany, moving to Australia, different changing jobs, all this stuff. And this was the one constant that was always there for us, that we could just keep coming back to this and just have fun doing it. So it was definitely a good therapy to have this project.
That's cool.
Because I was basically answering a question about how we kept ourselves motivated for a project like this that takes 1.5 years to do. I think, it was both motivating each other. It was the COVID time, was also like a personal way of how you motivate yourself.
So Sam, right before you left, and we were kind of gearing up to talk a little bit about the design of Deadeye and what went in there and the kind of creative choices that the two have made. We can maybe take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about that, and then afterward we'll take an actual proper break to give you a rest, and we'll move on afterward. So.
Okay.
For Ben.
Yeah, I tried to. Photoshop, don't leave me. So we got sketches again. So I already knew what I didn't want for Deadeye. That was all the scale stuff and the lizard stuff. So Deadeye was supposed to be a lot different. So these are like the first 2 sketches were kind of something like no hands, something like arms. But the silhouette was too much like what Flathead was. So went for more silhouette breaks that looks more like one of these fishes you have in an aquarium. They have all these tendrils and stuff. And going for more sleek, more agile form, whereas Flathead is just a puncher. It's like raw power. And that it was supposed to be like this agile creature that looks like as if he's always up to something. You don't know what he's going to do next. So I came up with this drawing of more like tentacle inspired one. So because tentacles is like all this, it's very curvy, like moving like snakes. It's more of a soft surface, and it's in total contrast of the rather bulky nature of Flathead with all those shells that are pretty like stiff material. But I already had the idea of like these larger ears, but when I showed it to Sam, it was like to make a proper bat. And because bat is like reminded me also of rats. I thought like, hey, give him rat's eyes, but large of them, but make them pure black. So we only needed another sketch, and that was basically him. So originally I wanted to have like these white, like dead, milky eyes, but Sam had a way better idea of just making him dead black. This is how we came up with Deadeye, actually, at the end.
Such a nice like 3D volume that's present in this particular concept. I'm like, you blocked this in Zbrush and then you brought it in here and you did a rendering of it, right? Just to like, hey people, I did the concept for it. Like I'm sure you did that, right?
No, this is all 2D. Drawn from scratch. I had an amazing teacher at one of the teams I worked at Blizzard. When I started, he taught me like the 3D kind of spacing, the camera and the perspective stuff, and there's a lot of teaching happening at the same time. So these sketches were done while I was taught from someone in my team about concept art, because he was a brilliant concept artist. And we got inspired. We started sketching, and at the same time, I sketched those guys. So there's always something on the side going that fits the subject. So, but again, same workflow. Dynamic spheres, stuff sticking together. Even each finger is like you sculpt one finger and then you put copy paste them in, arrange them. Sculpting the upper head with the eyes and the big ears, of course. Especially starting with the main features like the head. Once this was great, and moved on to the body. So each tentacle was a sphere that was just stretched out. So nothing is merged together. It's all separate. So we could move things around and change proportions if necessary. And then there we went over to what became the working model, like the retopo that we worked on later. So this was less design stuff because the design was mostly done.
The last thing was the big thing that we always talked about was making a big difference between the two around solid and more flexible, tougher and more squishy, drier and more and wetter. And so that was always something that we were talking about when Ben was sculpting these guys.
Yeah.
Like and then little things like remember Ben, like the little tentacles at the bottom. We were talking. It's one of the things where we said when he screams, we want that to pop up as if he's getting threatened by the other creature, or he's trying to become a little bit bigger.
I think it didn't have them. No, in this drawing there were a few these dangly bits, but at the end, I think even in the first block art, no, they weren't there yet. This idea came later. I think when you said, "Hey, we should do this," when he screams, they come out and they wiggle a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's true.
But yeah, that stuff. Yeah, that was always a back and forth that we always went to with these guys. We wanted them to look very different from each other.
Yeah.
As if you would draw, if you would make a mind map around the word contrast. You have contrast in the middle, and what adds to contrast, not just shapes, colors and roughness and specular, and all this can create a lot of contrast. So I did most of the shape part, but Sam did all the surfacing part, making the two super different.
Yeah. We can really hear, just by hearing the two of you talk, like Sam, I can really hear how you have this this great attention to materials, by the way. How do materials react? How do materials look like? Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it squishy? These sorts of things, It's like you're really, really kind of focused on that. And that's actually one of the things that I was saying before we had that cut there, which was you have this great attention to materials, it feels like, in your portfolio, but I do invite anyone who's really interested in materials to go and check out your portfolio, because you have some great examples of that. And that's something that actually I think a lot of people kind of struggle with a little bit from time to time, because when we do creatures, when we do robots, when we do characters, we think a lot about the ZBrush sculpting, the high poly, the simulation, and Mars Designer. We don't often think enough about the materials and how the materials are supposed to look like and behave, but that influences everything, Hey there, thanks for watching our video. If you find it useful, don't forget to give us a like, to subscribe, share this video with anyone you think it will benefit. And if you want to have access to more great Outgang content, head over to outgang.studio. That's the platform where I regularly upload classes dedicated to ZBrush, Marvelous Designer, Substance Painter, Anatomy, the character art for video games pipeline, you can become a member on outgang.studio for only $10 a month, and in the process, you are contributing to making all of this possible. Thanks a lot for watching once again. Let's get back to the interview. So for the second part of the interview, what we want to do is to go through the whole process of taking, we've seen so far all of the blockouts for both creatures, for both Deadeye and for Flathead. And now what we want to do is to really talk about the process of taking those blockouts and really going through each step, each major creation steps, which involves the high poly, the texturing, the rendering, these sorts of things. And really just to explain the whole workflow to go from those blockouts that we have within Zbrush to the final presentation renders that we have seen. So who wants to start with that?
Ben, you start with that, and then I'll take over when you go into UVs.
Exactly. I want
take
to
it from there.
Kind of show the workflow for Flathead, and then for Deadeye, because the Deadeye workflow is pretty much the same, so I can shorten it. And once I hit the UVs for Deadeye, I hand it over to you, because this was basically when I handed the model over to you.
Cool.
Okay, but now the challenge was where it goes kind of technical. How do we take something out of Zbrush, and for instance, not into Keyshot, but into a application like Maya, where it's going to be processed further for animation and deformation, because there's a lot more steps coming after this one here. So the Zbrush part is actually, it was the shortest one in the whole pipeline. So I had the block out, and the next thing what we did was doing a retopo, and I did a very low res retopo manually. This was done in Modo, but you can do it in Blender, you can do it in Maya. It's pretty much the same everywhere. It's just polygon creation onto a existing surface. So the reason why I kept it very low is I could do it faster, and second, this lowest mesh was going to be the drive mesh for the animator to drive the animation, because if you have a very dense geometry in Maya, for instance, and you try to animate it, the viewport slows down so much, and the animator has to work at 5 FPS maybe. So this can be quite hard to work with. So this lowest mesh became the actual drive mesh, and then the first subdivision of this lowest mesh became the actual render mesh, which is this guy here on the right. So they're both the same. It's just that what was actually modeled and retopoed was this guy here. This is out of Modo. So I retopoed it like the mouth open, each shell, and then the first sub-D frozen is this guy. This is the one that was rendered and textured and finally also animated. But so the first thing I had to do, okay, this was done. At this point, I sent the mesh over to Perry to do the rigging for it. So if we always had to go back and change a few things, it wouldn't hurt us that much unless we had already textures and UVs. But this was the first stage that I got to him, and it was all working. So I got green light from Perry. Hey, the mesh is working for rigging animation. It deforms nicely, so you can go ahead. A few additions I did to this one, which was not in the... that was like Photoshop right there. A few additions I did that was not in the concept or in the scope. There was like these little spiky things. And here's a little info. Most of them sit directly on a vertex. So you have your mesh right there.
They do, yeah.
And you have a vertex. So I put them there. So it was easier for the rigger to assign the skin weights. So let's say this vertex has like 0.8 in skin weight. So he could give this entire piece that is all made of polygons also 0.8, and that would all move at the same time. So we could avoid some distortion there. So that was a tip that he gave me. Not all of them are sitting directly on top of each other. There are a few that sit in between. But this is actually a good thing to do. Also, especially in games, when you have coins or little things that are separate pieces of geo, if you sit them on a vertex, the rigger can give them 100% or the same skin weight, so they can move parallel.
You mean each of these little spikes don't have their own bones, like their own individual bones? They haven't been individually rigged?
No, they're just they share the same skin cluster as the arm or whatever surface they're attached to.
I'm just yanking your chain there. Yeah.
And that that method makes sure they stick to it. But no, they don't have their own bones. Don't give me any ideas. Maybe next time we do.
Nice.
Okay, so this guy was this was like the final retopo, so that was good. And then it came to do UVs, and UVs are things that are not very creatively exciting. I mean, Retopo isn't either, but I think Retopo is a part that some people call it a necessary evil, but it is time consuming. Can be boring, of course, because you don't do design. Actually, it's kind of mindless work. But the word mindless already says it. You can shut off your brain, just do this meditating work of retoppling a character and give your creativity a rest until it becomes creative again when you do the surfacing.
I have a question actually before we move on to UVs and stuff like that. So what we're looking at right now is the retopology done on the high res. Is that right? Or is there a sculpting phase that comes after the retopology?
On the left here, this is the rough retopo on the blockout that comes out of Zbrush.
Okay. So the idea is that you do a retopo early so that you can sculpt afterward on top of it? Is that
yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's the whole idea of it, because I'm taking this back into Zbrush to sculpt the final detail, but it already will have UVs and everything, so I can bake displacement maps. That's basically the workflow.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's a big difference, right, between like a more VFX-ish pipeline, which this kind of follows, and what's more traditionally done in games, which is you kind of finish the high poly everything first, and then afterward you do the retopology, and then you kind of move on. But
exactly,
like in this kind of more VFX kind of approach here, it's actually more like you do the blockout / high poly-ish a little bit, then you do the retopo, and then you do the UVs, and then afterward you continue to sculpt on it. It's kind of an interesting kind of difference there between the pipelines.
Exactly. In games, the high poly is just your source for detail, and after you've baked everything, you pretty much abandon it. But here you keep working with everything is high res in VFX and the offline rendering stuff. I mean, that's why it's offline render, right? You can go crazier. But then there came the UVs, and the UVs we wanted to go crazy, wanted to have so much detail, but at the same time, we don't have a render farm. So we only had like machines and like not the latest and greatest hardware, but we had to kind of take that into account when we did like UVs and textures, because let's see if I get. So these are the UVs for Flathead. So on the left here, we got the body. I think it's like, I don't have the teeth, the eyes, and the tongue here, but at total, I think it's like around 96 UDIMs for this guy. And a couple of things I did here is I got a lot of good feedback from Sam how to make the life of a surface artist easier. And this is actually also like part of being a modeler. You do the UVs, but you also have to keep in mind there's always someone in the pipeline that comes after you, and he has to work with the stuff you deliver. So and at Blizzard I learned a lot from Sam how UVs could be best for Mari, like making them most compatible with Mari.
Thank you for thinking about us, Ben.
Yeah. All good. For instance, that's why like this might be made look like maybe a waste of UV space, but for a surface artist, this is like Flathead's tail. The tip is right here, but spreading them across like these UDIMs, it's easier for a surface artist to like paint a gradient in Mari, because you just make a stroke across all these UDIMs, for instance, and then instead of mirroring them left to right or flipping the UVs in Mari, you copy. Let's say you select one UDIM, you copy paste it into this one because it's exactly the same. You can do stuff like this, and also keeping texel density in mind as well. So this is how we came up with 96 UDIMs for Flathead, all 4K. I think it's like 8 to 9 maps each.
I have a stupid question because I'm all games and no VFX. Did you do all these by hand, by the way, or did you like just do a auto retopo for most of these surfaces?
All by hand.
So you did 96 UDIMs all by hand?
You do one side and you mirror it over. Then you just move the mirrored ones like up into the next row. That's pretty much it.
Oh, okay, so you only did it 48 times then. Okay.
And since it's all organic, you just hit unfold and job done, pretty much.
Wow. Okay. How much time did it take you to go through the UVs?
A couple of days.
A couple of days?
Yeah. So I think what took me the most was the layout, because you want to make sure you arrange them properly so they're all in packs across the character. And at the same time, you want to maintain that the same pixel density. On separate objects, it's kind of okay to have a slight difference, but of something that is like one continuous piece of geo, like the body, you don't want to meet, or you don't want to have a seam because you have higher pixel density on one UDIM, you have lower on the other. So that was a bit of the challenging doing the layout and everything, but it's a bit more forgiving if you work in VFX, right? Of course, you can't go crazy, super crazy, but it's a bit more forgiving than games for sure, where you have to do everything into one in case you have one material for everything.
What's the VFX unwrapping software of choice?
I just used Maya for it. The standard Maya tools, yeah.
It's got some pretty good tools in there, yeah. I love those unwrapping tools too, actually.
But I think visual effects houses, they have all their own programmers and crazy masterminds who come up with tools that just are.
Yeah, a lot of studios have their own stuff, but they also use Maya and some other softwares out there.
I think for visual effects, Maya is just a skeleton, and then they build everything on their own. I can imagine. Righty.
Nice.
So from UVs to the rigs, that's Perry's final rig. So there's a lot of controllers for everything, for the eyes, for the head, and for all the parts, even the shells you can move. That works. I think I can load up Maya and load it real quick. Let's see, next slide is, and that's the final sculpt. So once it was UV'd, I took him back into Zbrush and projected my the block-up model on, because the block-up model already had a few hints of details that I wanted to go for, some experimental stuff. But I just put him back into Zbrush and projected everything on, and then continued sculpting. Let's see, is this the guy? A huge file. And here's the thing. All the sculpting, I mean, I sculpted all these shells like manually inside of ZBrush because I wanted to bake those placement maps out of ZBrush. Now I probably would do it different and do a lot of stuff inside of Mari using like existing displacement maps that you can download, or photographs, raw images of photographs from turtles or other stuff. I mean, there are websites like Texturing XYZ we can download like scanned displacement maps that come huge resolutions, and they come in 32-bit with lots of different layers. They're awesome to use for that. But back then, I still sculpted all that inside of ZBrush for that. But these are all the retopologized parts. So if we go down, this is basically that mesh that came back in, and has all UVs, and then using the multi-map exporter to export the displacement maps out of it. So yeah, that was actually the fun part. You have everything set up in ZBrush, all the meshes unwrapped, everything. It works with the rigging. Now it's like putting on some music, just sculpting away. But this was not the final detail pass. The final detail pass was done inside of Mari, because this is a workflow I tried for the first time. So this was the whole idea for it. So I had my sculpted detail that I baked into a displacement that became the ZBrush displacements. And then I had another layer of displacement map, which was like the really crisp stuff. And this is where I think it's definitely, you would need hundreds of millions of polygons inside of ZBrush to reach that level of detail, because like the sculpting or polygon-based sculpting, you need to go crazy with the resolution to get that density, that detail density. And this is where things like manually painting 32-bit displacement maps from scanned animals in Substance or Mari comes in handy, because you don't have to push your mesh so hard inside of ZBrush. Because especially with continuous pieces of geo, like this body is one piece, and having more than like 25 million for a single subtool, even if you have a beast machine, ZBrush starts to kind of chug, or any sculpting application, I'm sure, starts to become problems. I think ZBrush has the HD geo, but it's only like a certain location. And it's still kind of, I mean, you can bake it down to displacements, but it's a workaround, but it's all polygon based, which you don't have to do if you do a portion of the detailing, but take it to a certain point instead of Zbrush and then continue instead of Mari with the final detail pass. So we had basically two layers of displacements, and Redshift has this amazing displacement blender. Just plug it in.
We have a question from the Twitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
From Meaningless Light, who's asking, so he remesh some Retopo base and then fixes it. I guess he's asking if you have any sort of remesh aspect in your Retopo pass, or if it's all by hand.
Oh, this was all by hand, but ZRemesh definitely can do some stuff, right? You can do a low res or a ZRemesh and then, fix some errors in it, and you have a good base. What I would put a ZRemesh are the arms, right? Anything that's a simpler shape, and then ZRemesh the arms and bring them back, then or just ZRemesh individual limbs and then merging them back together. I tried that once, but it was a while ago, and I had a lot of spirals. That's what ZRemesh sometimes does. But other than that, of course, whatever works. I mean, ZRemesh, go for it. No problem at all. I mean, I do it mostly by hand because I do it low res, and I just enjoy the modeling aspect of it. But ZRemesh is definitely a good option. Yeah, I mean, the results matter, so all good. Okay, so at the end result is the left is the ZBrush scoped, and the right is the one with both the ZBrush displacement and the Mari displacement both applied. See if I can draw on here so you can see that. For instance, let me look here at the arm, and we have all the scales here, and the bumps.
Yeah, there's a lot more details there. Yeah. So like, that's all the texturing that's doing that, I assume?
Yeah, this detail pass here, that's all the actual painted displacement maps instead of into Mari. Yeah. You take the same sculpt at a lower res level into Mari, and then you start painting grayscale displacement maps. That's all. They're just grayscale maps, 32-bit. So you bring them into Mari, into the image manager, and you just start to projection paint and export them out, because everything is UV'd. You export them out, and you have your ZBrush displacements sitting there, and your Mari displacements in another directory, and with the displacement blender, or Arnold has, I think, its own node. You bring them back in, you blend them together, like dial the intensity of each of the ones, and until you're happy with the result. So yeah, I would have needed to push ZBrush to the max to reach this detail fidelity. Definitely, it could have worked, but I don't know if you have so many millions and millions of polygons in one scene, or 60 million for a subtool. It might get into issues when you do a decimation, or if you do, baking on it or any operation. It might load, it might rotate in a viewport, but working with it might be quite difficult. So this is where definitely this comes in. Also here around the neck, this area. So there's a lot bumpier and stuff. So this really helped a lot. And the plus is you can use these maps still in Mari, use them as masks to drive your cavity, to drive your convexity, and drive them into your roughness and your specular. So you have full control. So it's a lot of work that you can save there.
One of the questions that I personally have, okay, like whenever I'm making a character, and I think that the two of you can probably have a very interesting answer here, is that question of like, okay, when do I stop working in the high poly, and when do I start, like there's like this kind of gray zone, and there's all these details that it's like, you can do them either way. It's like you could sculpt them, you could do them on the texturing side of things instead. And like, it kind of makes it so that sometimes you don't really know. You're like, okay, do I stop the high poly here? Do I continue? Like how do you kind of navigate through that kind of question to be like, okay, now is the time to go within the texturing part, or do I stay at the high poly stage? Like, how do you two approach that kind of question?
I think it's good. It's a good thing that you asked it right now, because Deadeye was different to this guy. And this is actually us trying, hey, how much do we have to do actually in ZBrush? How much we can do in Mari? But it's a good question. I've seen a colleague of mine doing an entire head in Substance Painter. He brought in a base mesh that he made in Mari. No detail, nothing. And in Painter, there's a plugin called, it has sculpting brushes, but what it actually does is it generates normal maps, but it behaves like a ZBrush sculpt. And he did a fully detailed head just in Painter.
Is it a Carve?
I think it's Carve, exactly. Carve, that's the one. Yeah.
From Gensi, actually, from Gensi Buxelli.
There we go.
I won't say where he works, but I mean, that's not a secret. But yeah.
So no
that guy's great,
geometry sculpting at all.
That plugin is great.
Yeah, it's really good. So there we go. I think there's no rule yet when to stop. I think it depends on the pipeline and how much time you have. But yeah, NUSM is better than in Mari than I am in sculpting, so that's why I stopped earlier with Deadeye.
You guys will see pretty soon, like the main thing, like when we were pushing Deadeye on this, and I think Ben will eventually also like go over this, is I was asking Ben to leave it as empty as possible, so I could throw some ideas around in Sketch. Generally, I don't like sketching in 3D because it's really time consuming. But since this was a personal project, and Ben, I mean, it's happened in films before, and many other things where they just ask me to sketch something out. And what I do is and I'll show you guys later like how you do it, but I start almost like Photoshop, like photo collaging things together really quickly in Mari, to start getting a feel and a sense of things. But a lot of times, if the sculpt has way too much, is too detailed, it doesn't give flexibility for that kind of change. The danger of it is when you have a project where they don't have a very clear goal, and it becomes an iteration bottleneck, because they're like, oh, we can iterate in 3D, cool, and they just iterate. But yeah, I think a lot of times I think I've seen an approach in both ways. I don't think there's a better or a worse. I've seen it where they put all the detail in the sculpt, and then that informs the texture. But at that point, the texture is attached to the sculpt, and it's a little bit harder to stick away from it. I generally prefer the sculpt to be informing general things like muscles, tension, skin stretching, things like that. Things that are easier to do in ZBrush. And then when we go into something that gets close to camera, that's where I want to take over and start doing all the pore detail and, the feel of the skin and all that. Yeah.
That was awesome to see, because the whole modeling process was faster. We could see results faster from the ones that Sam did. But at the same time, you didn't get to sculpt that much, so it's less fun, but it looks better when it's already out and you have someone who's really good at it playing with it. Okay. This is just the final render mesh. Same workflow, a lower res retopo, and the first sub-D is this one right there. So the reason why I put the hand here is this is like a tip I got from someone at Blur back in the days. It's always good to have one continuous loop going around the entire hand. See if I can highlight that. So if you double click on edge loop, it should go all the way around in the center of the fingers, because this is going to be your UV split. And then it's a lot easier to do this.
Right.
So you don't have those seams going along the hand.
Yeah.
So it's also all
common.
one loop. Yeah. So that was a good tip, definitely. But other than that, it's no crazy shapes like Flathead's shells and everything that we had to retopo. It's just one piece of geo. And of course, the teeth are separate, the tongue was separate. The eyes were interesting to do because they're actually based on the anatomy of a rat's eye. So they have this huge lens and the deep sclera in between, all that. And then these are the UVs. So I did based on Sam's feedback. So I think together with the teeth, the tongue, the hair, and the eyes, it's like 74 UDIMs. It was going to be crazier if we kept the textile density the same across the entire body. It would have been 120 something, because the tentacles, they are a huge surface. Like 4 of the tentacles, they are the entire body if you look at the space they take. So we reduced the textile density just a tiny bit on the tentacles to have less UDIMs, because I think our machines couldn't have handled that properly.
I have a stupid question. I can see that there seems to be an edge loop that is perfectly aligned with the separation between the UDIMs. What's up with that?
Yeah.
I can actually load that file real quick. We can go deeper into that.
So while Ben is loading that, I wanted to probably help inform a little bit on
go for it.
Why the UV count, right? Like, it all depends on how you want to use it. For example, if you know you're making something and it's never going to be close to camera, there's no reason to be going so high on UV count. But because we wanted to initially always just get as close as possible to these guys, because even with the renders that we got out, in the future we might go back to it and get even closer and do stuff and have fun with it. Where we're making like the showing people how we made the stuff and all that. So we wanted to go pretty high on these guys, but always let that be informed by how you're going to be using the asset. Because if you're only going to be doing full body turntables on your creatures or your monsters, there's no reason to be going this high. But yeah, I love, since this is a personal project and I love putting detail into stuff, I wanted as much as possible on the resolution so I could get the most out of it.
Nice.
So yeah, about your question, this is there's all straight. There's just a one.
Oh, there's an ever so tiny gap there. Yeah.
Exactly, 1 or 2 pixels. So this is just to make sure just like Sam could paint a gradient all the way through if you had to. So you can directly on the UVs inside of Mari, you can paint across all the UDIMs with one stroke. And if you wanted to paint a gradient, you could do that easily. So that's why we kept these divisions like straight. Imagine they would go like wobbly. That stroke would have had too much of a gap. But other than that, pretty much the same approach. Left and right. Actually, one copy, but not flipped. So Mari can take copy, paste over, copy, paste over. We paint one side.
Oh, right. Smart.
So that worked quite well. So on Deadeye, we did a few tests with displacements because we had different textile densities in some places, slightly different, but we were worried that it would create a seam, but it did not. It was all fine. So this is the Zbrush scope, the final Zbrush scope, and it's not that detailed. Like the leg is pretty empty here, and the arms. There's some larger wrinkles that we kept, but other than that, that was the base that I left off with, and I just baked out the displacement maps for all the UDIMs and handed them over to Sam. Handed the mesh over to Sam as well, and here's another shot of the rig. Perry did with it. Really cool playing with those. And yeah. And if I quickly bring in Maya here. That was the final one. And that's the one I handed over to the texture master himself. Yeah, I could show a bit of Mari for Flathead, but if Sam, if you want to take over, feel free to do that.
Just a short message. We got a rated from Andrew. It's amazing. Thank you so much for the rate on Twitch. We got 70 people now, so we're almost 100 people watching the stream. So
damn.
Andrew.
No pressure.
Amazing.
No pressure at all.
Yeah, no pressure.
Andrew, thank you so much. Welcome everyone who is here to our little community. Yeah, it's great. We got 2 Titans here that are just dishing it out and talking about their awesome project that they've made together there. So it's great to let them talk. Just I don't know, someone who just left the building for some reason. I don't know where he went. He probably went to like get some beer or something. And
Okay.
Cool. So Ben, you want me to continue this guy?
Oh, you can, by all means, man.
So I'll be going a little bit over what happened after Ben handed me all the amazing models that he did for this guy. He's so cute. Look at that thing. So, the main thing I was going on for Deadeye was, I think you before I disconnected before, Laura, like you were asking the question. Whenever you ask a tough question, I'll just disconnect and.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So, so when I approach materials and creatures, one of the things I start doing is asking questions to the asset. Where do you live? How do you live? How do you hunt? What do you eat? When you hunt, how do you do it? Have you been in battles? Are you a newborn? Like all these questions that will help me inform a little bit of the story elements I'll be putting into it. And then the biggest thing I asked, even some art directors sometimes, when they're trying to figure out what to do with the creature, and I did this, I remember with the Hydralisk that I did for StarCraft. I went to the art director and I asked him if this was your pet, like a little cute dog, and you were to pet the Hydralisk, how does it feel in your hand? And I remember he got super excited, and I was super excited with him, because then it just got a really nice conversation going of, oh, like this and like that, and he's, yeah, and so it a very simple question like that, it will inform you if it's a very rough surface, if it's bumpy, if it's slimy, if it's, and that will start driving a little bit of the material. To me, I think a very interesting way of thinking on modeling that I see some of the best modelers I've worked with, like Ben. This is something they think about, and it's modeling according to the material. They think about the material before they model. And so when you see the 3D model without any textures or anything like that, you can already start feeling what is going to be metal. You know what's going to be leather. You know what's going to be fabric. And to me, that's where it makes my job way easier, because I just have to do very little work and it already looks like that. Otherwise, it's quite a lot more work before I even start, But yeah, so this guy, let me show you guys. I have some images here to show you some progress.
You had fun with the rig for sure.
Yes.
Did you work on Cyberpunk, or are you just a fan of the game?
Oh, sorry. Is my screen? Me?
Oh,
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I have a new project going on that it's going to be cyberpunkish, and you guys will see it at some point. So just trying to get inspired with colors and all that stuff, So there we go. Okay. This is, like Ben was showing, this is like a raw render of the displacement. The model for Deadeye. And initially, before Ben did the sculpt pass, I asked him to please give me this so I could start playing with him and see where we would take him. So before I even do anything, I'll show you. This is what Ben gave me later on. Once I started putting my stuff in there, Ben and I were talking. I was like, okay, Ben, I need some skin wrinkling, some stretching of skin. Let's make those bones look like they're really like pushing the skin forward and that kind of stuff. And that helps. That is stuff that is really hard to do in texturing. So it definitely, that's where there's a little bit of back and forth with Ben and I. When it starts getting all the stuff on top, he is a little bit more complex on his displacement, because there's a lot of material play on him. There's stuff that gets dry, there's stuff that gets smooth, and there's stuff that is shiny. So all this complexity goes into him, but never. It's all like a small process of layering one thing at a time. It's not like I just put the whole thing at once. So I do a pass of vein work. I do a pass of top skin. I do a pass of soft skin, and so I slowly start building up all the layers on him. The second thing I wanted to try out was to figure out how he was gonna look in color wise, and so here are some really bad sketches from me on color. So what I was doing here was trying to figure out what patterns and what kind of interesting thing I could do with Deadeye that would really separate him from Flathead. And so in the end, I ended up talking to a really good friend, Jake Panion. He's a credible artist, and I always show him all my stuff, and I try to get feedback from him. And so I showed him this stuff, and I was like, "Hey man, which one is your favorite? Which one do you like?" He sent me this image back, and he's like, "What if you try to do something with just white skin, where his colors just truly pop on certain areas instead of everywhere?" And I saw this, and I showed it to Ben, and we're like, "Yes, this is gonna be it."
That's also the contrast we were looking for. The earthy shell-like colors versus like something like dead and white. And
I like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, it's funny because Jake knows that I don't need like a crazy finished rendered image for me to get me going. I just need something to guide me really quickly on where to start going to. And this is enough for me. So at this point, what I start doing is collecting reference. And you guys will see I have a little bit of reference of everything. And so, like I was talking to you guys, I start thinking very heavily and quickly on materials and inspiration and starting to connect, like where to draw some of the materials from. This is the cutest thing. Look at that.
That is so cute. Oh my god, what the hell is that? What is that?
It's a little turtle. It's
oh
amazing.
My god. I was looking at frogs the other day. Yeah, there's a good. Frogs are so
That's
crazy
awesome.
cute. They're so cute. They're like also kind of slimy and gross, but they're cute at the same time.
Yes.
Like,
yes. And so I always also use inspiration from films and concepts and stuff like that. But I make sure as I'm dialing my materials and I'm doing my texture, I always look to the reference of real life because that's what you want to be matching to. And so I use parts of these guys on everything. So I used mouths from dogs. I used transitions from octopus for his skin. So a lot of the transitions that you see on Deadeye, they're from octopus. So you see them all over him.
can you go back to that pure ref? I want to break your concentration and then with something that's completely random for just a minute. What's up with that dog mouth? Can you go back to that? Like the dog mouth is there. What the hell? Like, is that normal?
It's no, it's a little bit of, I think it's this is the rough part about texturing when you need to start looking for some infections and gum diseases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some dogs build it a little bit of it, but there was a very clear look that I wanted, and this is the image that I was like, yes, that I want that mouth on Deadeye.
That's like my teeth after eating chocolate. That's what they look like.
Yes.
Or Nutella, right?
Sorry for the mental picture.
Yeah. At the time when I was painting this, some creases were done at Frame Store and other places, and I was like, oh, this is super cool to see. I want to get some inspiration from that, but I also want to do something that it's not the same thing. So that's where he ended up being his own little color scheme. You'll see some anime and stuff over here, but this is all for pose reference when I was posing the guys fighting. And then this is some of the stuff that I used on his ears and his nose, and you see that stuff very clearly over here. So I'm drawing ideas from many sources, and I'm trying to use as much as I can from different animals and creatures, and as I put them together. But yeah, so this is something I do for every character and every asset I work on. I always collect reference before starting to start getting ideas on what I want to do with the different parts of the creature.
So cool. So cool.
Then, so like Ben was saying, on the UV side of things, since Ben already touched on that, I don't have to go too deep on it. But the basic idea is that I want to have something. As clean as possible on the UVs, so that I can also copy things from one panel to the other in Mari. So Mari, I can either flip stuff in the middle from left to right, right to left, top to bottom, but I can also just grab a whole panel and just copy over what I'm doing. So this is the biggest tip someone gave me when I was starting to texture paint, and is the best tip I can give you today. When you're painting creatures like this and monsters, don't try and paint all the detail and everything at once. Paint half of the creature, flip it over, and then you can do all the asymmetric detail afterwards on the side that you just pasted over, and you get a quick pass at everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Andrew was saying, clean UVs always make me happy. I get super happy with clean UVs. So at the beginning, the first test I did was a UV test, and in the test, I was trying to see how big we would need to go, and this is literally like a 5-minute test of putting something on it just to see what it would look like. And I was showing Ben, like, this is what I could do with one UV domain. This is the amount of quality we'll get. And if I have 2 UV domains on this area, this is the amount of quality I'll get. And obviously, we're like, okay, so we now know how high to go on the head. But like Ben was saying, it was going to be too high for the entire body. But because of his design, we could do a different resolution for his head and a different one for the body that was a little bit lower. If you can keep it the same, 100% go with that, always. But we always knew that we would get a little bit closer to the faces on the rest of the body, and so we decided to do that.
We have a question from Useless Artist. What is you doing?
Nice. I know there's different names for these guys, but one of these squares is a UV domain, and a UV shell is one of each one of these guys.
I think people are used to the word UDIMs, actually, so, but you're special.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what it is. So on this guy here, so I saved a lot of my in progress renders for this guy, so you guys can see the progress as I'm testing Deadeye and testing subsurface and all that stuff. Ben is laughing because we have an interesting story for this one.
He called me one morning. I can't do this. I feel useless. I suck so bad. It's like, what's going on? Renders, the skin, I can't get it to work. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, I'll right after I show you this to you guys, I'm gonna show you how I approach materials and when I start texturing and when I do materials. And the very first thing I do before I even start texturing is to do a really quick material pass on everything, the metals, the leather, and all that stuff, to get it as close as possible to what I'm aiming for. And so and doing that, I was starting to do some skin tests on Deadeye, and this is a test where it's just a multi-layer subsurface. And so while I was doing that, I was also doing single scattering subsurface test, which is this guy. But when combining the two of them, it wouldn't work which I've never seen before. And I think it was like 3 months where I was embarrassed to call Ben and show him my progress because it just wouldn't work. And eventually I called Ben one morning. I'm like, Ben, I want to cry, man. I think I suck at this. I don't know how to do this. It's looking bad. I can't do it. And a friend of mine told me, oh, did you know there was a bug on the render? Just update to the latest. And I update it and look beautiful all of a sudden. I'm like, oh no. I spent 3 months trying to figure this out. And so I almost quit the whole industry at that point. But yeah, it was
Please
it was good. So this is a quick test on me showing Ben like how far I could take things on skin without sculpting it. And then that's when I started just testing different things. So you guys will see that I switch between like a full HDR into like a dark lighting scenario. I'm doing that because I'm testing the SSS. And when I test SSS, I like to turn off all the lights and leave only stuff from behind to see how the skin's reacting, how far I'm pushing the scattering on the skin and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't get dirty with all the lights. It's a lot simpler. If you guys are ever trying to do subsurface, try that out. I'm sure everyone is doing it. But it's a really good tip to not get overwhelmed with all this stuff. And so the other thing is, you guys haven't seen Deadeye on this lighting scenario, but I like dialing all my materials in a neutral lighting environment, so they don't get contaminated by a lot of blues or reds or greens. And so that's when I'm comfortable with all this stuff. That's when I actually start switching light rigs, and at that point we already started talking about what kind of lighting scenario they would be in all the time. And Ben passed me this light rig, and I just continued, working with him on that light rig.
So you're essentially so you start all these material tests and all these rendering tests and all of that stuff. Like you start the moment that Ben is done with the retopo and the UVs, right? Like he's starting to high poly while you're actually starting to work on this. So you two are working in parallel on the same creature, right? Am I getting this right?
I work on it when Ben is done with the UVs. That's when I feel comfortable to start putting work on this guy. Material wise, I can start a little bit earlier, and I think I did for subsurface and some of that stuff.
Yeah, because you don't need the UVs for that. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. All right.
But yeah, there's a lot of fun renders for this guy. At some point, he had like a yellow streak on his face, and the more time I got to spend on him, the more detail I could put on him. And at some point, Ben and I had to decide to just let it go. This is the version where he was going to be like blind on his eyes, but we thought he looked cuter with the black eyes.
That's the thing, right? So usually large eyes make a character look cuter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but, in this case, he was supposed to look like if he's up to something when he looks at you.
Yes. Yeah, we knew that was going to be a little bit of a challenge for him, to make him menacing, with the big eyes. But yeah, we still wanted to go with that Deadeye look.
I mean, the glowing parts were such a great idea that Sam had.
Yeah, they came along a little bit. I mean, you guys, this is some of the first tests that Ben and I were doing on them. The first time we actually put them together in the arena.
That was the first run with them together. Yeah.
Yeah, and at this point we started talking about extra detailing on them and all that. But then that's when the glowing bits started coming in, and we're like, something that would really separate them if these arenas have these scenarios where an arena would change gravity in the middle of the fight, and so the creatures have to adapt to that, and then another arena turns the lights off, and creatures that are more adapted to fighting in the dark and can see in the dark have an advantage at that point. And so that's where a lot of the ideas of his glowing parts came in, where he uses it as a distraction because you're looking at the ears and the big things, and you're forgetting about some other parts that he has going on, like his arms and his leg that are clawing at you, you know. So that's where a lot of that stuff came in. And let me show you guys some quick Mari stuff. Do we have
let's
time?
do it. Oh,
Are we
yeah.
good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm keeping all of you here until like midnight.
Cool. So this is Mr. Deadeye. Mari, Substance. There's always a question, which one to do it on, which one is the best. Really, there's advantages and disadvantages on both. And really, you could do any of these creases or any other creaser in either of the software. There's an advantage on the Mari side that is why it's used mostly in films. It's because it's pretty good at handling very heavy geo, and sometimes Substance has incredible tools that I love using as well. But when I need to load the geo and paint on very heavy geometry, because I'm painting a lot of the times on the decimated mesh from Ben, so I have all the sculpt detail in my Mari session. It doesn't slow down as much, so you guys can see this moving around, and it's pretty good with a crazy ton of layers going on. So what I'll do is show you guys really quickly like the build up on him and how I put like a bunch of this detail together, so you can see how it came together. Oh, I think I saw someone asking what render we're using. We're using Redshift to render all this stuff. Mm-hmm.
So Andrew is saying some of the stuff he did on Dune had 450 UDIMs. He can't imagine doing that in Substance.
Yeah, sadly, I'm hoping, and I know that like the film industry is pushing for it. I'm hoping that Substance rewrites a little bit of the base code to handle heavy geo, because I would love to do a lot of this stuff in Substance. But yeah, I use for all of my work, I always use a little bit of both. But yeah, so for this guy, so this is some of the sketching that I'm doing on him early on to start getting an idea of volume, color, transitions, values, all that kind of stuff. And from this, I start deriving additional detail on him. And if you guys are wondering how I'm doing this, I rarely paint anything by hand. Unless it's like masks or things like that. So I'm using images all the time to project a lot of this detail. And so I can show you guys.
Do you use a lot of data derived from like things like curvature map? Perhaps that's a bit further ahead right now, but I'm kind of curious to know.
A little bit. So this is something incredible, amazing, and at the same time a little bit dangerous. And I'll explain myself. So curvature maps, ambient occlusion maps, it helps you do things very quickly. And Substance makes heavy use of this, and Mari as well, to do like dirt passes and scratching and all this stuff. What a lot of people don't realize though is that it should mainly be used to take you 70% of the way there, and from there you should take on afterwards. So what I'm saying is very simple, and this is something I explain to students when I'm talking about texture painting and adding story elements to things. So imagine a fire hydrant, right? You could do all the stuff that comes prepackaged for you on a material, and you'll have scratches, and you'll have like a little bit of rust and all this stuff. But there's story elements and things that you can add to it that the software doesn't know about it, right? It doesn't understand. So for example, I can do things visually really quickly in texturing to tell you what's happening in the world around the fire hydrant. For example, if I have some splashes of dirt only at the bottom of the fire hydrant, that means it's an area that rains and is not as dry. So when it rains, it splashes dirt on the fire hydrant. If the fire hydrant has a little bit of desaturation on the top of it, and the paint is like wearing out on the top and from some angles only. It means that the sun is exposed to the sun all the time, and that's where the sun is coming out from. If you just do it like a blanket thing on substance, you don't know where the sun is coming from. So I'm already telling you where the sun is positioned and all that stuff. If you add some stains on the bottom of the fire hydrant and not at the top, I'm informing you that there's the small dogs in the area, no big ones that are getting a little bit higher when they pee on the fire hydrant. And so I'm adding all the story elements really quickly that you catch right away without the procedural part of it, right? That is really hard for Substance to know that stuff.
Yeah.
But the basic scratching and dust and layer and the values for that I can do really fast and Substance, and it'll eliminate all that process that usually takes time to set up to get me there quicker, so I can start doing the fun stuff, you know.
Cool.
So yeah, that's kind of the stuff. You can keep pushing it, right? Like if you add scratch marks around the area that gets open to attach the hose into it, it means that the fire hydrant has been used before, or if it's not there, it hasn't been used. So yeah, you can keep going crazy with this, and I love creating stories around the stuff that I paint, you know. So this is an image I'm using to quickly sketch this guy. And what I'm doing is using sections of him, because it doesn't need to be high resolution. It's not going to be the final image, but I'm using sections of him to start coloring him really quickly. So I'll show you guys how I do that, and then we'll move on. At this stage, I'm just trying to get some quick reads on some of his shapes. And you guys will see me switching between light mode, shaded, and flat all the time. And that's something I like doing, just to proof really quickly what I'm trying to paint. And for those Mario uses out there, that's F1, F2, F3. And so what I'm doing here is literally quickly, like you'll see, trying to get some of these colors in so that I can get some nice reads of shapes and different values coming into him. And all I'm doing is literally this the whole time. I'm just rotating the image, projecting it, pasting it, just so that I can start getting different values on him. Because if I do this by hand, it's going to take forever. If I let just the occlusion drive this, it's only going to go into the crevices and stuff like that. So I do a pass with Mbach and curvature and all that, but I still do this to get a lot of my custom feel for what I'm trying to do on the creature. Sorry that I'm talking at like 100 miles per hour.
Oh, no, it's fine. People can just slow down the video after the fact if they want.
We have a question in the Twitch.
Oh, okay.
Someone asking about what sort of workstation specs you need to handle assets like this.
I don't have a great computer at home. I have I only have a 2080 GTX card. Ben has a way better machine than I do. What do you have, Ben?
Oh, mine is not the latest. I have a Titan RTX, which is like the last generation. And for Mario needs a lot of VRAM. So you need like 16 gigs, 24 gigs. So I had a 1080 before that was really chugging with this project. So I got the Titan back in the day.
Yeah, the other thing you want to have a good amount of is memory, because I think I have 128 right now on my machine, and it can handle this pretty well. But if you have 16, it might start struggling. 32, it's still okay. It's still good. Like a lot of studios still use 16 and 32. But when the assets start getting very heavy, very big, I need as much as possible for memory.
Definitely, yeah.
Which is hard to come by, right? If you get trying to get a 3080 or something these days.
Yes. Yeah. So even in adding color on this guy, you can start seeing that I'm only adding it on specifically where I want to see color. I'm not adding like a blanket red on every crevice on him. And then whenever I do a different feel or material on him, I split it. So the belly is supposed to be soft and all that, and his mask is here. I do the texturing part of it, and then I use the mask to control how to reveal it. So show you guys this stuff. So that's what's revealing the mask right now for him. Transitions are really important on creatures, and for my transitions, I use a bunch of stuff that I prepare from like walls and things like this. I just contrast it up and start making masks out of it that I use to do my transitions.
And these are specifically transitions between the different materials that you'll have?
Yes. Yeah, what I like doing is whenever the material is going on from one surface to the other, I like transitioning it. A lot of the things in nature have transitions. Most of it has transitions. If you look at like a snowy mountain, it usually doesn't just go from snow to the river. There's a nice transition of the snow, the rocks underneath, but there's always grass growing because when it starts melting, it's watering the grass. And then if you get dry, it can start getting dry at the bottom of that, transitions into rocks, which transition into the river. So there's always transitions in nature and creatures. So it's something Ben and I also talked a lot about on how to transition things on these guys.
Nice.
And the craziest transition on him, you'll see it. It's on the legs. It's coming up pretty soon.
Oh yeah.
So everything. Yeah. All the stuff I just do like some base stuff, and you'll rarely see like an actual like flat color. And so you'll see textures that I'm using that I buy from Megascans or things like that. Show you some disgusting stuff, stuff like this. Just to use as a base for things.
Is that baloney?
I use this a lot for gums and raw skin.
But what is
it? I'm not sure, actually.
I'm sure it's baloney.
I'm not sure. and then I have like the mask driving the different veins on him. I do. As far as you guys are seeing, as you can see, I'm not honing in and detailing right away. I'm doing like a broad pass first, and then I start detailing little by little and get closer and closer and closer. This here. So this is some of the transition stuff that starts coming in.
That was from the octopus picture thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what I'm using here is pretty much an octopus to transition a lot of the stuff. Let me see if I can pull out that image for you guys.
I got a quick question for you. So just to clarify what we're talking about when we're talking about transition, you are talking about, let's say at the rendering stage later on, there will be a different material applied to there with different material properties. Is that, am I getting that right? Or yeah, okay.
Yeah. So at the end of the stage, I think I have still this Maya session open. I can show you guys. Yeah, okay, here we go.
Because then the follow-up question I would have is, why have different materials and not just have one big material that has different masks plugged into there? But I'm sure there's a good answer.
So there's two ways to approach it. And I'll be showing you guys that stuff in a second. One is to separate everything and bring everything separate into the shader and layer it. I love that method. You can get a lot of more realism, photorealism that way. It's a bit heavier on the shader side. So if you have a machine that is not very powerful at home and you're trying to be cheap with the renders, it does become a bit heavier for rendering because you have a lot more stuff going on. But yeah, this guy, it's a little bit of a bit more simple because we didn't have much resources. So I'll still show you, like I still set up the material as a multi-shader and then go from there. So this is the guy. So as you can see, there's a lot of his stuff that you see on his skin. And I'm using that to transition from rough to soft. And this is my sketch for how the black areas will be looking on him.
I have a question about the projection painting you're doing.
Okay.
Like the octopus you had there, that has some lighting information in the photo.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate not getting that lighting information onto your model?
So you can always flatten a little bit of the lighting in Photoshop. There's I forgot the name of the filter. There's like a shadow light filter or something like that, where it tries to take off. That I don't worry too much about it. What I start doing is let me see if I can find that guy. Side mouth, new transition. Okay. So what I'm doing with a lot of my projection is trying to use parts that are the most flat on it without too much shadows and lights. But lucky enough, like the octopus is underwater, so there's not a lot of lighting going on him. I can get some really nice flat stuff. And so whenever I see stuff like this, then I can use that on very specific spots to get some different effects on him that you see on the fingers and things like that.
That's really cool.
I rarely paint light on my model, on my texture, which in gaming is pretty different. Sometimes you want some of that lighting painted in. And the reason for that is because if it reacts way more realistic to light when you have it flat. But yeah, I generally use stuff as overlays and different blending modes in Mari, just like you would in Photoshop, just to start getting rid of some of that lighting and just using parts of what I'm projecting. Because as you see, like I'll keep like putting stuff on top and on top and on top. So you rarely see the actual base of what I painted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I get rid of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And so eventually nose comes in and all that stuff. So let me dimples. See, I'm just doing like, Mr. Deadeye is going through puberty, so he has some dimples going on.
Nice.
He's a very young creature. I also start playing with the idea of doing just some of the skin rash that he has, and you see a little bit of that on him on some areas like this. So he has a little bit of a skin disease going on, and it's just little story details that I'm adding to him to show some of the damage he's gotten in the wild, and he's not a pristine creature.
No, he looks like
this is mostly
rummaging through garbage cans.
Yes, he likes it.
Cool.
So this is how I start putting this stuff. The funny thing is I rarely use a shader in Mari to look at my final result, which in Substance is on at all times. You're seeing how the bump is affecting, how the roughness is affecting, how the specular is affecting. I rarely look at that. Look at it like that in Mari. I'm usually looking at very flat channels. It's just the way I learn, and it's a really good thing to know. I've seen a few artists that have only done Substance before, that when they come to Mari, they struggle on that, because since Substance was doing all that stuff for them, when they're asked to change something specifically that a director wants or something, they don't know how to approach it. So it's good to know what is actually happening when you paint white on an area and what happens when you paint black on an area. This is the roughness patch on him. So pass on him. So obviously, since his roughness, not glossiness, the white will be rougher, the black will be shinier. So anything Really, really black would be super shiny, like his mouth, around his eyes, things like that. That you want that wet look. He wants wet and disgusting in the mouth. And so all the black stuff on him is being driven by a mask, and so I can connect that in multiple channels and have that drive that. His crazier maps are like his SSS map. This is something where I think I was training Ben on SSS painting and all that kind of stuff. This is one of the layers for SSS, and this is my other layer. You'll see it in a second. And we don't have to go too deep into this stuff, but just showing you guys some of the passes that I had to paint on these guys.
And what is this right now?
So this is what you will see underneath the skin. There's two levels of SSS on him. And so the deeper you go, it starts changing on him. And so this is a little bit more shallow on him, and then the other one is deeper on him, where you start seeing the raw muscle and blood and all that kind of stuff.
Can we see that deep layer?
Yeah. The deep layer is a bit simpler than this because you don't really see all this. It just comes through when it's very behind on backlighting and stuff like that.
So your skin shader has 3 layers then. Am I correct? Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
As 2 at the moment. It has it has the color, the SSS, and the SSS deep on it.
Okay.
You can different studios also use 3 sometimes. They use like epidermal, subdermal, and then it all depends on what they're trying to achieve and the look and all that kind of stuff. But for him, this worked out pretty well for us. The other thing I do is I separate my displacements, and this is the part where I'm sketching for Ben as we're going back and forth. This is my broadest pass on the displacement. This is the biggest shapes that will be happening on him. And let me show you guys.
If I might ask another question for SSS, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you also have a map that controls the depth for the subsurface scattering effect?
Yes. And I will show you guys that map. Oh, sorry, that's not it. This is veins. So this is on him. What I'm doing. He's so subsurfacey overall, because it's such a creature devoid by light that he has a lot of subsurface going on. So I have a bit of a blanket thing going on him, but there are definitely parts like the tip of the tentacles and the mouth and things that are a bit tougher. A little bit more see-through on him. So the wider it is, the more subsurface he is going to be looking. And as you guys see here, I'm using some of the cavity, the curvature maps from Ben, just as a starting point, and then I paint custom stuff on top of that. But yeah, so that's what you get to see on him when he's so like that material change is what I'm trying to achieve on what I'm showing you guys. Something from slimy to rough.
You're going to show us the materials, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I want to see that. And that's going to slot itself nicely into Mating's question, which is all those SSS layers that you have, are they exported and plugged into the shader individually, or do you just like render all that out as to one big map?
I render
or one flat
I plug them in separately. Yeah. They're plugged in separately. Mm-hmm.
I want to see the shaders. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think we're almost done with the Mari part, so I can jump over that. And this is my detail pass for the skin on him, so you can see all the stuff that I'm trying to sculpt in Mari. instead of using ZBrush.
Which is displacement in the end, right?
All the displacement, yeah.
Cool.
So the hardest part for me is always fingers because they're cylinders, and so since I'm projecting a lot of this stuff, I have to be spinning. So arms are pretty difficult as well because I have to be spinning a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and projecting stuff around instead of just the back where I just blanket project a bunch of stuff. And so Deadeye not only has fingers and arms, but he has some long legs, a tail, and 4 tentacles that are all cylinders. So the projection time on him was insane. This is like a very tough asset to project.
Ben, what did you do to me? Damn it!
Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Must have been payback for something you've done.
The payback was his delivery that I had to put together 2 characters in an arena and the rendering.
It's so as you guys saw, like there's no one image that I use to project the whole thing, and it just looks good right off the bat. I'm going bit by bit. I first do the white skin, and then I'm working on the black skin, and then I'm working on the transitions, and then the rough areas and the wet areas. So I little by little I layer the roughness, the displacement, all that stuff. It comes one at a time. Because if you try to do everything at once, it's too much. You won't get the right stuff. So we shoot the stuff out. I need to clean up some of the textures that were shot out, but I think Ben, I think Deadeye is around 1,200 textures in the end.
Yeah,
exported textures.
Yeah,
he has quite a lot of stuff because we also something we ended up doing. Highly suggest this for people that don't have a great machine like we do, is combining the maps. So this is a combination of SSS value, specular value, and roughness. And so in the red channel, we just make an RGB mask out of this. And then in Maya, we split it and call it in. So this is the specular value on him. The brighter it is, the more shiny he's going to be. The darker, the less shiny, the less reflective. Here we have the roughness that you guys just saw, and then the SSS value. And so we combine all the stuff on him. Makes it way lighter on when it comes into Maya. Oh, and a cool one, it's the emission on him. This is his the teeth and the hair on another object, so that's why they still appear here, but this is his emission stuff. That's what makes him glow. So again, getting inspired by Octopus and looking at how they have all this stuff, just it's super cool because they, with a light shining on them, it almost looks like bioluminescent.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, so just getting inspired on some of that stuff and trying to mimic that on him.
Super cool.
Redshift just has an AUV just for emission, so we had a separate pass for composition, so we can still control it in comp.
Yep.
To add some glow or make it more intense.
All right.
So yeah.
Can we see those
move into
materials? Yeah.
Yes. The materials the material is it's super simple. You'll laugh. Yeah. You'll laugh. It's incredibly simple.
Yeah, with the crazy amount of work you put into the textures, I assume that the shaders don't have that much work to do.
Yeah. So, did I do something to my mic? Something that I'm doing is also trying to do the heavy carrying in Mari, in the texture side, instead of doing the heavy carry in the shader. And it's just a decision I made early on. Many places decide to do that on the shader instead of the texture, and it's not wrong to do either or. You know, it's just how do you want to approach it? If you're way better at making materials than you are painting, then go with that approach. You know, or if you're trying to have way more control, make it more photorealistic, separate everything, make it, bring it all separate together in the shader. Okay, so let me open the material for him. I start everything with a material blender from Redshift. Because at some point I thought I was going to separate the whole thing. And so I was going to put the heart skin on a separate layer and all that. In the end, I ended up just painting everything in Mari, and the separation is happening there. But literally, this is all that is coming in. These 5 maps over here. And as you can see, I'm not doing a lot of carrying at all in the shader. The crazy the hard part is always, to me, this is probably not as hard for many people, but to me it's the subsurface dialing to get it to look right. And so I'm using the Redshift material on this guy, which has subsurface multiple scattering and single scattering, and I'm using both for the end result. And I can show you really quickly why I'm doing that.
Yeah, go for it.
So this is Deadeye without SSS. This is Deadeye with the multi-scattering. And it looks subsurfacey. The danger here is that it looks waxy. It looks like a candle. And obviously, when you start plugging maps and all that, you get rid of some of it. But with this method, the subsurface calculation is not being aware of what's around it. It's just taking the ray, shooting it in, and give to the length or the depth that you gave it, and just doing the calculation. This is SSS single scatter. There you go. So this is the single scatter SSS, which is quite different from the multi-scattering.
Can you
so
go back
here
and forth?
you can easily.
Can you just?
Yep. Let me. This viewer doesn't let me. One more. There we go. Okay, here we go. So this is the multi-scatter, and this is a single scatter. So you can see the big difference where one looks a little bit like a wax figure, like a little toy, and then the other one looks a little bit more realistic because you can see the volumes a little bit better. So the single scattering has the ability to go in and separate through RGB how deep each ray goes in of the color, which gives you better control, more realism, and that kind of stuff. So if you're trying to do more realistic skin stuff in Redshift, you should just definitely be turning single scattering on. But you can see how it's now aware that there's stuff behind the cheek and there's stuff inside the lips. You can see all that stuff, including the rays as they go, and also giving you a little bit more sense of the depth and the heaviness of the material. And so what I do in the end is using a little bit of a combination of both. I just kiss in a little bit of the multi-scattering. And this is not the final numbers that I use for Deadeye. It's just a quick test I did last night just to show you guys the difference of what each one of those does for him. Cool. So yeah, so over here, like these numbers, if you copy them, they almost likely they won't work for your character because they're specific to
they need to be dialed
the scale. Yeah, to the scale of Deadeye.
Right.
And then I'm mapping different things. So I'm using my SSS value over here on my amount. I'm using my scatter coefficient, which is the pass that you guys saw with painting the mouth very white and the tentacles very white at the end. That's what I'm plugging in over here. And for the transmission color. And then I'm also using that map over here on the scatter coefficient as well. So I'm using the same map, plugging it in multiple places.
All right, cool.
And so yeah, very simple setup on his material.
You did so much on the texturing side. Yeah,
I'm doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the texturing side, and it's just a decision I made early on. For the next creature, I'll probably go heavier on the shader, and I'll have a bigger network. Something that is nice to do over here. I didn't have to do too much back and forth with him, but it's to also like control your maps from this point on, instead of having to go back to Mari and reshooting every time you're trying to change hue or something like that. So if you have a lot of masks to control the dark areas on him and all that, you can do that way faster if you have the controls in the shader, and just iteration wise you can go quicker that way. So how red is this stuff and all that.
Those transitions that we had saw, those black and white masks that you were using for transitions, where are they used now exactly? Maybe that's a silly question, but
yeah, no. So I'm using them. Let me see if this is. So he has multiple transitions going on.
And those are different materials.
Yeah. One is to go from the black to the white skin, and that's all the stuff in between. That's what I use all those masks. I'm also doing some transitions on the belly area, and that's what I'm using those white and black masks for. But I also use those masks for many things, to control spec individually on spec, to control the roughness individually. So I keep linking that stuff in Mari to use that everywhere.
But like, do those masks actually make it to Maya? Or are they used exclusively inside of Mari? You know, because like we saw one shader there, but do you have multiple shaders that are within a bigger tree for like the shader that's on the hands versus the shader that's on the rest of the body?
No, on this guy, only in Mari.
Okay.
If I was doing this in a big production, I would probably be shooting that stuff out for either a LookDev artist, or if I'm doing the LookDev, just so that. If something gets kicked back to us, or Ben and I want to make a change on these guys, then we can do it quickly without having to open Mari, do it, shoot it out. But the way I set up this guy was a really big Mari exploration that I was trying to do on white monster skin. So I was trying to do as much as I could in Mari at this point.
It's good that you showed the last still image, because we could. That was the first one I did the compositing for Deadeye.
Ben, you want to show us a few things there?
Yeah, I can go over the rendering part, the compositing. We still have some time left.
Yeah, just a few minutes. We're pretty much at the end. Probably everyone's pretty tired, but I wouldn't mind seeing a few quick tips as to how to render using Redshift and what you guys did in the software versus compositing or something like that.
So we did the compositing in Natron. Natron is a kind of a free alternative to Nuke. It's like completely open source. It's not as powerful as Nuke is today. It's probably as powerful as Nuke was 6-7 years ago, but it does the basic stuff. But it's open source, so everyone can use it. So this is the scene, the compositing for all the Deadeye stuff. So these are the turntables, and like this one. So it comes in sequences. So it takes a bit to calculate, because it's pretty heavy stuff. But if we take the passes for the still render, the first one, I'll come over here and let me show that one. See what it does. Yeah, it's thinking. There's a lot of computation happening right there. Where's my viewer? Oh, there it is. Okay. It still needs to calculate everything. Over here. Okay. See if I can get it before and after.
Oh, well, that is calculating, Ben.
Yeah.
I don't know if people notice, and I saw some questions that popped up on some of the places we posted it. People were asking who wins the fight, and Ben and I did something unique for that. On Ben and I both posted on our station, and on Ben's post, Flathead wins, and on my post, Deadeye wins. So there's a unique render on each post where our guys win.
Exactly. I kind of show those in a minute because the fights were composited not in Atron but in Fusion, and I have it open here. So yeah, this takes a while to compute, but let's see if I can get the first image there. So this is what Redshift spit out. This is like the raw render out of Redshift. You know, we put the scene together, did all the scene assembly. Move my camera right there a little bit. Come on. There you go. And you hit render, and this is what we got. I mean, the lighting was kind of a challenging part, but then we set up all the passes. But this was like one of the main beauty pass, and the final result was, you know, after all this tree. Yeah, so this is like before and after. So this is before, right out of Redshift, and this is after. There we go. We can even do it like this. So this is after, this before Redshift, and then after compositing. So we had a lot of passes for this. So we had an AO. I always render 2 AOs. So this is kind of a narrow AO, and then we rendered a more wide AO to cover like wider crevices. This is like the pure diffuse channel. This one here, right here. This is the emission. So I had the mesh lights from the arena and the emission that Sam painted, like all like in one pass, and I could use masks to mask them out. For instance, like Deadeye has his own mask pass, so I could isolate just Deadeye and therefore isolate the emission, bring those in and comp it in. This was the emission. That was the beauty pass. We had light passes, so I isolated most of the lights that came in. So we had some extra control for each one that we could dial. Like this was the volume light that came from the top.
I love that render, by the way. Just like that, it's so good. It's so like dramatic. Like it's great, yeah.
And we could use the same passes to do the 2 different turntables. So we didn't have to render the second turntable where the lights come off. We just used passes to generate that version of the turntable. We didn't have to re-render everything. But this is like the arena lights from left to right. This is the mesh lights from the bottom. And then, of course, masks for the arena floor and the arena itself. This is like the indirect light going on. SSS pass. That's the pure specular pass. And here, this is what Sam was talking about. The different type of contrast of the surfaces. We have like a rough skin here, and then the wetness going on over there. It gets really slimy around the mouth, and the high reflective eyes. So yeah, and one of my favorite passes, depth. You can do so many cool things with depth pass. You can bring the character more to the foreground by gaining it a bit, lifting the colors or lifting the whole thing, and then or darkening the background with an inverse depth pass and stuff like this. So this all happened in this tree, so it just goes all the way through. And this is, let's see if this actually works. This is the spooky version of him without the lights turned on. But this might take too long right now. It's a lot of computing stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So for the fights, actually I can close this. For the fights, so the fights and the stills for Flathead were done in Fusion. So this is all the comping for the fights right there, each one. So right here, Flathead, same thing, same one of the same passes. The beauty pass right there. Then we have an AO wide, AO narrow. We got the different puzzle mats on the floor of the arena, and of course the Z depth right there. So if I look at the tree. So this is the final result at the end. And then look at the tree, what this all does. So we bring in, for instance, the beauty pass. We add the AO right there. Another bit of AO. So to bring out the shapes a bit more and add more darkness to the crevices. I darken the background a little bit and bring Flathead a bit more to the foreground, darken this side a little bit. So I want this to be the upper left part to be more popping. So first thing what I did, if I go back a little bit again, darken the background a bit. Darken this side a bit and make the front pop a bit more. Adding all these effects right there. Where's this? Yeah, this is where the volume light comes in a bit more. And all the way to the end. See. There we go. We have this background gradient, I think, somewhere. Yeah, right there. And then, of course, the defocus. Where we have, if we go all the way in, see, like, he himself he's sharper, but the background is blurred. This is where the defocus now comes in with the zenith pass. And then we start to get into the fights. So Fusion is actually computing that a bit faster. There we go. That's one of them. So one character comping is okay, but two of them, because Deadeye responded very sensitive to light intensity because his skin was so bright. I sometimes had to use light linking where one light is excluded, or where one character is excluded from the light, but the other guy is not. So this is this one. And the next image. Yeah, it's this one where Deadeye hurts like Flathead with one of his tentacles. He just smashes him here on the side. He tries to grab it.
Or Deadeye.
You mean Flathead?
Sorry, or Flathead, yeah. So.
That's the same scene, just a different camera angle. This is one of my favorites because I could play with the Z depth to blur Deadeye in the foreground, so the focus is on Flathead and the light coming in from the top left, like drawing on him. So it's like this cross direction that really leads into the image. Sam and his friend, they did all the posing. I just got the meshes and the textures. So
call out to John Thier. He's an amazing artist, and I learned so much about like composing the shot and what to overlap, what not to overlap. He helped us a lot on the poses. Really good feedback from him.
So in the end, with all the fight scenes and the animation, I think we generated 700 gigabytes of render data.
700 gigabytes?
Around that. If I made a backup of all the rendered stuff, and this was around 687 something.
Well, you couldn't make it up to 1 terabyte? Like
no, I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Try hard enough?
We needed more scenes. And but what made it up was the electricity bill. That was that was a bit painful.
And plus the hard drive, I'm sure you had to buy it to store all that data in there.
Oh yeah. I mean, 2-3 backups and everything. But this was 1.5 years. It was 5 months of rendering and comping. So that was probably the longest. You set up the scene, you turn on the render, tell it to render from frame 100 to 200, and let it render for a week.
Well, I want to say congratulations to the three of you for this project. It's one of the most amazing personal projects I've seen online. It's crazy the amount of work that is in there. I mean, Ben, all personal projects you make are like beyond AAA quality. So I guess coming from you, it's kind of expected, this kind of level of quality, but still, like, this project is quite an achievement. I think it's a pretty good time to wrap it up. I think the two of you have given us a lot of your time. You've been extremely generous with sharing all this knowledge. So on behalf of everyone who's here, I want to say a really big thank you for everything that you have shown. It's going to be invaluable for a lot of people, I'm pretty sure. So I think...
It's awesome. And a big shout out to everyone else who contributed. To Perry and John Tier and Chris Battaglia. They did all the sounds for the creatures. Jake Patton and Steve, the sound guy.
Kevin Merriman.
Kevin. And Tony Bracuntovic for all his great advices and help with Redshift and rendering in general. I think there's no software vendor he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And Jake Panion for the feedback that we would bug him for feedback all the time.
And Andres for animating Deadeye, and Peter Starstein for animating Flathead. So there was a lot of people involved. That was really cool. That's awesome. And thanks to Sam right here for teaching me how to texture properly. I think without him, I couldn't have textured Flathead the way it is now.
I did nothing. But thank you, Ben. No, thanks
so much.
Thanks to Ben for letting me work on with him, because it's an absolute pleasure, and I feel very lucky to be able to work with Ben, and hopefully in the future we'll be showing the next thing.
Dude, the next thing is already running. You know it.
Yeah.
You two are so cute. There's such a bro love that's kind of going on right now. So, where can people follow you if they want to see more of your work? Of course, there is ArtStation. Anywhere else that people can follow you, or is it just strictly that?
And I think we're going to post a breakdown soon on ArtStation and Zbrush Central. But I'm mostly on ArtStation. Same with messaging and stuff. Or Discord.
Same with me. Yeah.
Yep.
So ArtStation all the way. We shared the links a few times, so I'll make sure to share them, of course, everywhere where this video makes it. I also want to thank Lars and Christine for staying with us for the whole time and moderating the chat and asking questions. All right, everyone. That's it. Let's wrap it up.
Cheers.
Awesome.
See you all next time.
Yay.
It's been great. All right.
Yeah, that was awesome.